Welcome back to Kaleidoscope with Daisy Cousens. I am here with the phenomenal Executive Director of the Women's Liberation Front, Sharon Byrne. Now, Sharon, an issue that Wolf is fighting for is protecting women's safety and dignity in prisons. The laws in California changed in 2021 to allow inmates who identify as transgender to request a transfer to a facility that matches their preferred gender. Now, this is a big issue. What has the fallout from this been like?
Oh, this is a vile human rights abuse, and I want to tell you that as a Californian who's extremely upset that our state passed this bill. It's a vile human rights abuse, and it is inflicted on a population with literally nowhere to go. I mean, women in prison have nowhere to go. The way the law works is that any male inmate, rapist, murderer, violent inmate can suddenly declare that he feels like a woman, have no hormones or surgery, and be put on a list to transfer into the women's prison.
Oh my gosh.
It was a massive gift to violent male inmates, and it has turned out to be a horror for female inmates. We've had conversations with inmates. We filed a lawsuit against the California Department of Corrections for human rights abuses for the women in these prisons, and it is just an unbelievable state of affairs. However, we're not the only ones, right? Scotland was doing it as well. Ireland was also doing it. So, I mean, you know, we're clearly not the only ones, but it's unfortunate California is about 10 years ahead of everybody else. So we were the first ones to do this. And I'm so sorry that this is going to be our export to other states in the United States, because it is a terrible human rights abuse to women.
Oh, it really is. I mean, I actually heard a story a couple of years ago of a trans woman, you know, so a male identifying as a woman being moved into a women's prison, and then they actually impregnated 2 of the female inmates in there. I mean, that's correct, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. That is actually happening. And again, this is an absolutely vile human rights abuse. I actually spoke to some high-powered officials in the state of California that I thought would care about this and see this as an absolute abuse. And I was very surprised at the answer I got. The answer I got was, well, you know, the prison guards have really always been a problem. They've always been raping these poor women. And so what's it really going to matter? You know, if we put a few more men in the prison with I mean, just the premise that starts from, which is if you're a female inmate in California, you're going to get raped. So does it really matter who it's by? I mean, you know, is it really a problem that we put a few more in there with you to make sure? I could not believe that. I was absolutely just stunned by that. And it's really unfortunate that, again, the way our act was in particularly written. First of all, it is very hard to turn down a male inmate that wants to go into a women's prison. The way the act is written, it's very hard to turn it down. And second, any female in the prison who says, yeah, I don't want that person bunking with me and I don't want to be in the showers with them, is subject to disciplinary action. So it's not just that we let them in the prison. It's almost impossible to not let them in the prison, which is a tremendous gift. I mean, how many male inmates do you know that would much rather serve out their sentence in the women's prison? Right?
Exactly.
All you have to do is say, I feel like a woman, and you're over the wall, basically. So it's a terrible, again, best men's rights movement ever conceived, right? Who else would think this up, you know? But men looking to get like this with women, it's revolting. I'm sorry, it's just revolting.
Oh my gosh, that has absolutely knocked me for 6. That those women, those officials would say that. I mean, look, there seems to be this perception with prisoners, with men as well in men's prisons, that they're just going to go in there and get bashed and raped. I mean, certainly in men's prisons, there's the scourge of inmates raping each other in there. And then, of course, we've got the prison guards in women's prisons. And I really hate that attitude, because whether you're a man or a woman, you don't go to prison to become the victim of another crime, do you? That's absurd.
No, right? And of course, because you're in prison, right, you're already in an incarcerated situation. Where would you go exactly, you know, to escape your tormentor, right? You're in a confined situation. So yeah, it is really, it's an egregious human rights abuse. It's shocking that a developed nation would do it, and that a state that calls itself progressive would do it. That this is actually not progress at all. I mean, this is really going, when I said that we're being knocked sideways, right, and losing a lot of rights, I wasn't kidding. You know, it's been a bit of a pile on from all sides.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like unbelievable. The sort of stuff you think you'd only see in a dystopian novel. But no, it's happening in the modern world. Yep, absolutely. And look, just to add insult to injury, shortly after this legislation, SD 132, came into effect, condoms and other contraceptives were, for the first time ever, made fully available to inmates of a female-only prison facility. I mean, could there be any clearer evidence that there are biological males being housed with women and that obviously it shouldn't be happening?
That particular policy got put into play tells you something else, right? So here is the state now, the state, a very powerful state, not only collaborating to put men in women's prisons, they're actually pushing them into women's prisons. And when they get into women's prisons, right, saying, oh, you might need a condom, you know, because you're going to do some things to some women in there, right? So the state is a heavy-handed player here in absolutely inflicting this human rights abuse, which is putting you in with a rapist on women. I think it's Scottish women actually did some really good stats on this as well, that in their prisons, that the number of people that have committed sexual offenses, right? Rape, violent sexual offenses, that within the population that identifies as trans, it's an extremely high percentage. And that is the target market that then gets moved into the women's prisons, right? So, you know, men in men's prisons might be there for a variety of reasons, right? But within this subset of men in the prisons, the ones who identify as trans, the sexual assault rate is way high. And then that group is the one that gets moved into women's prisons, which you would think the state would stop and think about that for a minute. Like, yeah, that's going to be bad. No, they are full steam ahead on it. And actually, the prisons have been deemed in California as being too slow to admit men in. And so, the Senator Scott Wiener that wrote SB 132, and Scott Wiener is the devil in the state of California, writes some of the worst legislation there is. Scott Wiener asked for an audit of the prisons to see why is this taking so, why are they not moving this along faster? The Office of the Inspector General of California, Wolf, pushed really hard to have the Office of the Inspector General do a report on transfers of trans inmates into the women's prisons and give us some feedback on what's happening there. So the Office of the Inspector General found that, that the state was moving a bit slowly on it, but that really there was almost no way for the state to turn down someone who wanted to come in. And there's sort of 3 appeals committees set up. So if the person's not, the man's not happy that he's not being admitted to the women's prison, he gets appeal after appeal after appeal to make this case, right?
Oh my heavens.
So it really is, like I said, the state is not just passed a law saying it can be done. The state is a heavy-handed player in making men going into women's prisons, right? They're setting up a train there for that to happen, which is just an appalling state of affairs. It's just again, there's nothing progressive about this. There's no humanitarian concern here. This is absolutely meant to hurt women.
Yeah, you know what? I have to say, the term male privilege was at the forefront of what I call pop culture feminism for a while there in 2016 and 2017. I did a panel debate on it actually on an Australian network, and it was called Is Male Privilege Bull S? And we had a debate over whether or not it was real. Like, it was really big on the forefront of the culture war. And I've noticed that all those pop culture feminists, which is what I call them, who were going on about the current thing at the time, which was male privilege, and are also now touting this trans agenda, they would be, in my opinion, perfectly happy to see males in women's prisons. They'd have no problem with this at all. But isn't that, if you look at what the concept of male privilege is, like the ultimate form of exactly that, male privilege? Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, right? I mean, could you, again, best men's rights movement ever designed, right? I mean, really, really cleverly done, really, really brilliantly. It's so sick to think that, do you remember the Monty Python movie, Life of Brian, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that whole argument that the Roman had, that where he's like, I want to be a woman,
I want the right to have babies. I want the right to have them. Yeah.
I want to have babies, right? And now here we are. That's actually reality. Like, it's not even... That was crazy when that movie came out in 79 or whatever. That was just crazy talk. And it was comedy and it was spoof, and now it's actually reality, right? It's actually, it's a reality that none of us really saw coming. Although I would tell you, some feminists in the 70s did write about it, so there's going to be a problem. And I think the majority of us did not listen, right, or think too much about it. But yes, I think that is one of the problems with the transgender movement that's really not been articulated quite very well, which is, I'm sorry, you're hiding some people in your ranks that are called autogynephiles. They're transvestites that get erotically aroused by dressing as women. And you've also opened the door for a whole lot of men who have no intention of ever becoming women, but who say, oh yeah, I'm a woman, put me in there, right? I mean, very Monty Python-esque, except the state of California has enacted it into law. And it's not funny. Right? It's not funny at all. It's not funny for those women that are stuck with those men at all.
Oh gosh, no, it is absolutely not. And again, it is so fantastic that you and organisations like Wolf are out there, as I said, fighting this fight. Now, look, Sharon, just before we go, tell everyone where they can find the Women's Liberation Front online, and also what they can do to participate if they want to help out.
Absolutely. So we are a small but mighty band, right, that likes to work with lots of people, and we do some work across the world. I'll be at the United Nations Convention on the Status of Women in a couple of weeks in New York, right? We'll meet a lot of women from around the world. You can go to our website at womensliberationfront.org. You're welcome to get on our email list. We love to communicate all the work that we're doing. Obviously, we'd love supporters and donors as well. We also publish letters from the front. So women who are actually, or people, because we'll take them from men too, that are having actual encounters at the front where their rights are being usurped and other rights are being vaulted over theirs. We'd love to hear some of the stories. We've talked to some detransitioners. We've talked to women who've been fired, therapists who have said, my whole industry is gone with this and I can't take it. We've heard from doctors who are really upset about it. So, you know, people that are on the front lines having the experience, we'd love to hear from you and publish your letters as well.
Sharon
and follow us
Byrne.
on Facebook, of course, and Twitter.
Yes, absolutely. Follow them on social media. Check out the website. Sharon Byrne, you are so fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Daisy, for having me. I really appreciate it.